Before I get started with my talk, just wanted to make a note that I had forgot to introduce some folks during the introductions. And so with us today, we have a couple of directors from our Members First Power Cooperative. Members First is a co-op that PreCorp, Tongue River, and Fergus started to basically sit between us and Basin Electric, our power supplier. By forming this co-op, we were able to basically secure a local voice on the Basin board. And so I'd like to just recognize a couple of the directors we have. Jim Collins, he is from Tongue River Electric, and he is here with his wife, JC. And then Paul and Mary Deschmaker is also here from Fergus Electric. And so we're very happy to have those folks with us today as well. And then another omission that I made, and I sincerely apologize for this. Kenny Knutson and his wife Elaine. Kenny's a past director from PreCorp, and I forgot to introduce Kenny earlier, so Kenny, I apologize, but we're very glad to have you here. And then sneaking in on me towards the end, Senator Ogden Driscoll is here. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew Senator Driscoll was here. Thank you for coming. So I always look forward to my remarks and to have a little conversation with the members, whether it's at the annual meeting like we are today, or whether it's at the quarterly town hall meetings where we actually have we convene a telephone town hall. And I'm just curious, if you've participated on a telephone town hall meeting, could you raise your hand? So if you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Yeah, so we do this, it's just a conference call basically where I spend like the first 5 to 10 minutes giving everybody a update on PreCorp, and then I take questions from the group. And it's a great way to communicate, it's a great way to stay in touch with the members. And at this, the last call I had just a little over a week ago, I asked the group, well, what are your suggestions for what I talk about today to the membership? And what they suggested that I focus on was rates and reliability, two very important things. And I'd like to make sure that I touch on those, but I'd like to do it in the context of talking about where we are today, sort of a little bit about our past, our present, and our future, and to kind of put those in context. If you look back to the history of the electric cooperative movement in the country, it started in 1936. And the ability to take power to rural America, right now it seems like this was a breakthrough, probably right before it became a breakthrough, and it took many years for that to happen. It was a pretty crazy idea. Imagine people coming together in Washington to do that. And then also imagine here for Powder River Energy, our predecessor organization, Tri-County and Sheridan Johnson, for us 72 years ago, when those first directors came together and said, hey, let's make it so everybody that wants power in Northeast Wyoming can get it, and let's make sure that it's affordable. That was a revolutionary idea that has completely changed, I think, the fabric of our society and the fabric of rural America. Where we are today because of that, we have roughly 42 million people across the country served by electric cooperatives. And remember, cooperatives, we are member controlled, we are not for profit. It doesn't matter how big of a user you are or how small of a user you are on the system, you have the same power. And so essentially what happened back in 1936 and 72 years ago for us is we took a step and we democratized electric power. We made it for the people and by the people. It's pretty exciting. Today, the 42 million people that are member co-ops across the country, represent an astounding investment of about $118 billion. It's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of investment that's been made over the history of the cooperative movement, which was, I think, largely to democratize the provision of electric power to the people. That's our history. That's where we've came from, and throughout all this history, there's always been, I think, probably a struggle. I mean, I know the struggle continues today. We have the costs of building our infrastructure that over time have varied on how much members pay for that, and we have the cost of power, and these two things are sort of in tension. And if you take a look at where we've been in just the present time that we have, and sort of maybe even the past several years, as we've gone through boom and bust in our economy, when we have a boom time, the cost to do anything, the cost to build, are extremely expensive. You guys would agree with that? When things are really booming in the economy, I know for us, when we were building coal bed methane system out and building 1,000 miles of line a year, the cost to build things was really high. Today, we're not in that sort of a boom, but the cost to build has come down. If you look back during the time that we were booming, our rates were very cheap because of the growth that we were seeing on our system, because of things that were happening in our industry. We were even though we're still competitive when you compare us to others in the state, our power rates, we were getting bill credits. I don't know if you guys recall some of this, but there were years that 10% of our wholesale power cost was basically rebated to us. And this was fantastic for us. At the time, again, as we were booming, the cost to build stuff was super expensive. The cost of power was cheaper than it would have otherwise been. When we entered the bust part of that boom cycle, then what happens is the cost to build things really becomes less expensive because there's not a lot of competition. Contractor prices are fairly competitive. But what happens is our electric prices have gone up because of the declining sales and other things in the markets. And so there's this, over the history of our cooperative and the cooperative network nationally, as we've grown and the economies have ebbed and flowed, there's been this constant tension. And I would tell you that in 2015, this tension about our electric rates reached an all-time peak for us. I know that every month, many of you and many of the people that you know struggle to pay that power bill. I've talked to you. We've heard about it. In 2015, this issue became huge in our cooperative, not only for our residential customers, but we went through business bankruptcies of some of the customers that we thought would never go out of business, that could never possibly fail to pay their power bill. We experienced extraordinary losses of companies that just folded up and went out of business, and we experienced extraordinary expenses protecting your investment as it relates to many companies that were going bankrupt. And as a result of that, this was very difficult. I talked about this in 2015. Last year, we had sort of come through the bankruptcy side of things, but we were really facing challenges as it was relating to our rates. And here we are again, we're outside of the boom, we're in the bust, our sales are going down, and our expenses were going up. And I talked a lot last year about the rate increase that we were experiencing for just taking care of the poles and wires. And I talked also a lot about the extraordinary pressures that we were seeing at the wholesale level as our prices were also increasing because of the markets there. Luckily, we made it through. We came through that significant downturn in sales and a significant upturn in expenses, stronger and better. The PreCorp team, by working together, was able to reduce expenses by around $3 million, which was significant. When we went for our rate increase in 2016, we actually asked the commission to approve a rate increase based upon sales that would generate an end-of-year margin about $3 million. So had our employees not been able to come together and figure out ways to work more efficiently for you, to take care of you not only from the perspective of price, but also to make sure that we kept the lights on, we would have been in significant trouble. But we made it through, the employees responded, the board of directors provided the kind of leadership and direction that you need during hard times to make really tough decisions. And I can tell you that when you have a workforce that is down from where we were just a few years ago, from 145 employees to 120 employees, that's a significant amount of reshaping work and redefining what we do at PreCorp. And I think I would say that it's not that we've stopped doing things, it's that we've become more efficient in what we've done things. And the hats off to the employee team, the operations group, our inside folks, many of which you guys have seen today, folks that are here with the blue shirts on that are helping put the meeting on. The team really came together, and we've been able to make the adjustments, right-size the organization, refocus ourselves in a time where many companies did not have near the success that we had in repositioning ourselves without creating extreme havoc and extreme problems, not only to the customers that they serve, but also to their employee teams. So I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to get through that in our present year. It wasn't something that we did just on the spur of the moment. Beginning in 2013, we began this strategic planning process that has actually become a model for many of the co-ops that I've talked about across the nation. And this process is very disciplined. It's a lot different maybe than the way that we have done business in the past and approached strategy in the past, but I think the results speak for themselves. The fact that we've been able to reduce expenses, the fact that we've been able to work more efficiently, the fact that we've been able to continue to serve our membership at the highest levels possible is a testament to that process. So as we look to the future and we see what's on the horizon, the things that we know we need to do is, number one, work with the things that are in our core strength areas. So keep doing what we're good at, and maybe the things that we're not so good at, either get better or make sure they're important to be doing, and if they're not important to be doing, let's don't do those. So right now we have a team of 21 people in the organization that are basically working on what we call a strategy refresh. And we're trying to imagine, just like our predecessors did in 1936, and just like our co-op founders for PreCorp did 72 years ago, we try to imagine what is the future that is going to be in front of us, and how are we going to take the co-op and prepare us to do business in that future. So this group of 21 people, we have 3 different teams, 3 different groups that are working on 3 different assumptions, basically, of what our future may look like. And this group is coming together. They've been working on this actually for about a year. And we are posed to complete this process towards the first part of September, and then towards the end of September, we're going to be working with our board and looking at what is our vision for the future. When you take a look at what is the vision for our future, what does that mean? If you go back to the original massively transformative idea that was conceived way back then, the idea of democratizing electricity, making not only the infrastructure affordable, but making the power costs affordable. That's our focus. That's our focus for the future. And while I think we've done a really good job of doing that, there are so many things that are coming down the pike. If you pay attention to the news and you look at the technologies that are going on out in the world, a lot of this stuff is going to be impacting us in Wyoming. And Wyoming, just like PreCorp, Wyoming is completely impacted by what's been going on around us. Wyoming has an initiative going on right now called the Endow Initiative. You guys may have heard about it, you may have read about it in the paper, but Wyoming is trying to develop a 20-year vision for economic development and economic activity in Wyoming, because I think Wyoming, the legislators, the governor as well, they've realized that we just can't, if we don't try to change how we go about approaching how we do things here, we're going to be continually in this boom and bust cycle this boom and bust cycle that comes every 10 years for us. And so Wyoming as a state is looking at what Wyoming needs to be doing differently to build the economy, and we're doing that as well. Meanwhile, it's very important that we continue to keep the lights on. For the past 5 years, our operations folks have been involved in a maintenance plan where we have physically gone out and inspected and touched and maintained our entire system. So 20% of our system every year has had somebody go look at it, touch, and tighten. Now, that doesn't mean that there are not places in our system that still have lights that may be blinking. That doesn't mean there are places in our system that still have lines that may be older than that we would like, that aren't performing like we wish they would. But what that does mean is we've taken the time and the energy to go completely over our system at a level that we've never done in the past to maintain the system, and then also to plan how we're going to make sure that that system is able to operate efficiently for you in the future. So if you happen to be one of those folks who may be on a line that's either very far from a substation or maybe even a line that's close to the substation, and your power doesn't seem like it has the kind of quality that you want, whether your lights are blinking or whether a cloud rolls over the sky and your lights go off, that's something that we need to know about. And today, with the equipment that we have just barely started to have the ability to know what's going on out in our system without somebody calling in and telling us. We've started to do that. Part of what's going to happen in the future is that when we have power outages and line issues in the future, we will know that those issues or those problems have occurred before you can give us a call. And so if you happen to be using technology, and if you happen to have a smartphone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android or whatever it might be, or if you have a telephone and you want to be called, the systems that we will have operating in the not so distant future, the lights will go out in your house and you'll get a text message within minutes that says your power's out. Well, the good part about that is at least you know that we know your power's out. Nowadays, if you don't call us and tell us your power's out, we won't know. So there's an application that you can sign up for called Smart Hub, which is just the very beginning of that, and it's a way that you can report power outages, and you can tell our computer system to notify you if there's an outage. And more importantly, it will notify you when the power's been restored. So if you get a text message and it says your power's been restored and your lights are still out, chances are you need to give us a call then at that point. This is going to get much better in the future, and what that does for us, it helps us work more efficiently to drive down the cost of operating our system. In the next several years, it's going to be a critical time for our power supply, because in addition to the infrastructure that we have to maintain, the poles and wires that deliver you the power, that keep your lights on, the wholesale power industry is extremely challenged right now. Thankfully, we've been relieved for a time being from a lot of the issues that related to the Clean Power Plan and rolling out a new regulation to regulate how power plants operate. because of CO2. But that issue has not gone away. There's just been a reprieve for, I think, industry to really refocus and get ready for that, because the issue of CO2 and the issue of regulation, right now we're certainly enjoying a break from that, but I believe the future for regulation is still coming at us. There's a G&T in Kansas called Sunflower who has a permit in hand to build a 1,000 megawatt coal-fired power plant. Supercritical. The most efficient plant that you can build, one of the most efficient that you can build. Low emissions, all the emissions would be very low. But as the directors of Sunflower are considering whether or not to invest a couple $1 billion in a power plant that's going to last 50 years, they ask themselves, what is going to be the regulation and the regulatory regime that we have to do business with in 50 years, and 30 years, and 20 years? And those concerns, I think, are one of the biggest impediments that Wyoming has to getting our coal industry back to where it was. Those are pretty significant challenges. At Basin Electric, last year when the mid-year rate increase hit, us and 135 other co-ops across a 9-state region, we're all reeling from that. I'm pleased to tell you today that the rate forecast for Basin shows that they can get through their forecast period without an increase, assuming that things continue to work. Now, you take a 10-year forecast and you look out 10 years and you think, well, I'm not sure about 10 years. What I'm really concerned with is, what about this year? What about next year? And I'm very comfortable in telling you that in 2018, we're going to have wholesale power costs in 2018, and our distribution costs are not going to go up. So that's good news for 2018. In 2019, at this point, I'm cautiously optimistic that we could have another really good year in 2019 if a few things happen. Load growth is always good. As I mentioned, when we're growing, our rates tend to be stable or go down. And if we can get a little bit of growth happening on our system, that will help us quite a bit. So 2018, we're going to be good from a rate perspective. 2019, I'll know more, when we get closer to that, but I'm confident that we're going to be able to do our part as a PreCorp team to do what we can to hold our costs down and to increase the reliability. One of the projects that we're looking at for the future for us, as I mentioned, our teams are looking at what do we have to be doing in the future to continue on this great mission of providing power to everybody. And we're actually looking at replacing our meter reading system. Currently, the meters that we have report back to the PreCorp offices the meter readings. And this system is end of life. It's basically, it was end of life about 5 years ago. And our team has basically nursed it along and have kept it running. We plan to be installing a new metering system, which will give us much more information, much more timely information, and help us provide better information to you and better information back to us on how our system is doing. We're also looking at technology such as drones to see if we can use that to lower the cost of inspecting our power lines, and hopefully that all these things, these new technologies that are out there, will help us again lower our costs and improve the quality of service that we have. I think that we have a really exciting future at PreCorp. Even though we've had a couple of tough years that we've all made it through, I'm very much excited about the opportunities that are before us, the ability to continue to serve our membership, to make Wyoming, Northeast Wyoming, an even better place to be. And I would just encourage everybody here to continue to, if you've been listening or joining in on the town hall meetings that I do, great. If you have never taken one in, please do that. Because when you take a look at our history and where we've come from, the ability to have democratized electricity, access for everybody at an affordable rate. As Walt mentioned earlier, the most important piece of this is the membership. And it's the input from the membership, it's the engagement from the membership. That is what makes cooperatives different from any other utility that are out there. It's because of our members. So look around the room. We need to make sure that we bring in other folks to our meetings. We have to make sure that the membership of PreCorp continues to stay engaged in the governance of the cooperative through showing up at our annual meetings, through being engaged in the communications, and providing us our feedback. So in closing, I would like to just tell you how grateful I am for the opportunity to have been the CEO here since 2000. It's an exciting job. I love it every day. Some days I love it a little less than others, especially when bad things are going on in the system. But the thing I love most about my job is the conversations that I have with you. Whether you're telling me we're doing a good job, or whether you're telling me that we are not doing a good job and we can get better, we want to hear that, because our commitment is to you. You are the reason that we are here. And I know I speak on behalf of the entire PreCorp team when I tell you thank you for the opportunity to serve you, and we look forward to continuing to do that in the future. Thank you very much.